everyone, and welcome to the August 2012 edition of the VolunteerMatch Solutions Best Practice Network webinar series. I'm Casey Brennan from VolunteerMatch and will be moderating our session today. We're really thrilled to be welcoming Carol Cohn to our session. Adoringly referred to as the mother of cause marketing, Carol is an internationally recognized for her work in cause branding, corporate citizenship, and strategic philanthropy. She works for Edelman, and in her work she provides strategic counsel to clients on the development of cause and public engagement strategies, as well as corporate and brand citizenship. So she's a busy lady. She also leads the firm's annual Good Purpose Research Study, and we'll be sharing some of the findings from the 2012 edition of that research with us today. And we are lucky enough to have Carol at this year's VolunteerMatch Client Summit, where she gave the keynote presentation. And we've invited her back to this virtual stage to share her ideas and insights with our larger network of corporate practitioners. So we're thrilled to have you all on the call with us today to share this session with you. Before I get started, I wanted to give you a couple of reminders for how you can ask questions. You can do it in one of two ways. First, you can type the questions into the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. And you can also submit questions to us on Twitter, sending questions to @VM_solutions using the hashtag VMBPN. And then we will be posing these questions at the end of our session today. We'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes to take all of those. And then just a reminder to everybody that we will be circulating the slides after the session. So without further delay, I want to welcome Carol Cohn to the session today. Welcome, Carol.
Thanks, Casey. And shall I move it along?
Go right ahead. And I'll be
we're going to start. So thanks for that really kind and generous introduction. It was wonderful to be out with you and your colleagues at the Gap in May. It was a wonderful session. And today I know we've got a lot of friends on the phone, companies that I've met, worked with, etc. I want to give a special shout out to my wonderful friends and colleagues from PNC. And we're going to cover the PNC case today because it's such a wonderful, wonderful story about institutional will at all levels within that company to create a radically engaged business via the power of purpose. There are other people on the phone. Just shout outs to Gensler, who's our architect for Edelman, our friends at Charles Schwab, CSR Wire, MetLife, Discovery, MGM, Girl Scouts of the USA, also another Edelman client, our friends at Deloitte, Sabre, GM, and others. So it's a wonderful group of people as well as NGOs on the phone, and I am glad to be able to share with you some of our insights. I know we're going to share this deck with you afterwards, plus we're also going to add some other things to it that Casey's going to send to you. Today's presentation is from the Mile High City. So I came in last night for a kind of a late planned meeting. Yes, it is a mile high, so hopefully I won't pass out. I'm drinking a lot of water as I'm going to talk really fast. So if it goes dead on me, Casey, you're going to have to take up the rest of the presentation. All kidding aside.
Hopefully not.
As we said, we're going to talk a little about Good Purpose 2012, insights from a very important summit that we held at Edelman last fall. There was a combination of our employee engagement practice and our business plus social purpose practice, really talking about, again, the power of purpose and the radically engaged business to truly engage with employees for business and social impact. As well, I'm going to share some of our best practices in citizenship. So, Casey, let's move on to the next slide. There are many, many names for what all of us do, and what I have declared is that please don't get stuck in the name, whether it's citizenship purpose, whether it's social responsibility, CSR, that whenever you're talking to any of your colleagues to drive this to become a more powerful strategy, ask them for their definition of it, and then you'll be talking both from the same page. Certainly today, there was a recent study by IBM that came out with 1,734 CMOs from around the globe. And they really wanted to understand what are the challenges to building a brand and to building corporate reputation. And the answer was that because of radical transparency, social media, instant 24/7 communications, is that around the globe, it is no longer about just managing a brand, but it's also about the blending of a brand and corporate character. Because of radical transparency, employees, consumers, communities, partners, investors, and others, they can see inside an organization. So it's not just about what an organization makes, but it's how it behaves. And that's why I'm so excited to have joined Edelman about 2.5 years ago, because this strategy, again, whatever we call it, has become mainstream. And that every single person on this phone today, it's really critical that you become more strategic, have better engagement and integration throughout your organizations, whether you're for-profits or not-for-profits, and the collaborations that you create to solve social issues as well as to advance your organizations and businesses. It's absolutely critical to have those collaborations. So I trust today that I'm going to give you a few insights that will help you to be more powerful and successful in your various positions. Let's go to the next slide. I always like to start with clients, and Starbucks is one of our favorite clients around the globe, and it was wonderful when Howard Schultz came back to Starbucks to truly reestablish his role at the company. And I love this comment that he states, that there needs to be a balance between commerce and social responsibility, and the companies that are authentic about it, and authenticity today, again, with the radical transparency, is so critical. Let's look at the next slide. We also like to bring Paul Pullman, the CEO of Unilever, into the room, because he talks about it's a great time for brands that can provide a beacon of trust for consumers. And CEOs today are judged not just by the share price, but how they have an impact, a deep and sustained impact on society. Let's go to the next. So what is the power of purpose? The power of purpose does these 4 major things. I'm going to focus largely today about collaboration and inspiration with employees and customers, because that is so much the focus of Volunteer Match. It's how Volunteer Match provides support to our organizations to make sure that our effective engagements in terms of our volunteerism truly supports business, brand, and social objectives. Let's go to the next. I love to bring data into the room, and engagement with our employees does drive bottom line business success. I love this quote from Gallup, 3.9 times higher earnings per share growth, organizations that have engaged employees. Now, obviously, getting engaged with citizenship or purpose is not the only way to have an engaged organization. Having a higher purpose, having a great boss, having very constant communications and open communications is important too. But you can see that those most radically engaged organizations do return a higher level of profitability and growth. Let's look at the next slide. So let's go to our first poll. And I love doing this, and Casey, thank you for adding this to the presentation. How important is volunteerism to your corporate organization's character and business success? Extremely, partially, and getting stronger? It's one of the things that we do, but not evolving much or not at all. You have a few seconds to answer. So we would like you to check it off. This is our quick poll. We did this when we were at the Gap during our session in May, and it's great to see. We're going to see these results really quickly, I trust, Casey.
Let's give everyone 5 more seconds to get their responses in, and then I'll close and show everyone the results.
Terrific.
All right, here we go.
Let's see. Oh, okay, let's see what we've got here. Well, looks like we've got a ways to go. Let's see, 76%. Well, I think that's good, 76%. We've also got some outliers that 25%, it's one of the things not at all. So volunteerism is important. That's great. We'd love to move the green to the blue. So hopefully the presentation will do that. Let's move on. Casey, can we move to the next?
Yes.
Okay, so purpose. We had in the last year an amazing data point. The 7th billion person in the world was born. But we have a planet that's not getting any larger, and we know that by 2050 we will have over 9 billion people. Thus, it is a responsibility of business to find ways to use the finite resources of the world to provide a better life and a quality of life to that ever-growing population. Let's look at the next slide. What's happened in the last year since we fielded our good purpose research? Well, we saw horrible, horrible disasters in Japan. We saw radically engaged citizen consumers saying that they were striking, whether it was the Arab Spring or whether it was Occupy Wall Street. We saw wars that ended and veterans coming home, and then the sad fact that unfortunately our country in the U.S. is not taking care of our veterans as we should, with a very shocking at least 2 veteran suicides a day. So there are many, many social issues happening. Let's go to the next. We also see an evolving consumer. A consumer that in countries, especially in Europe, there are some countries reporting over 40% unemployment with youth. You can see these college grads saying, hire me, we're hungry, we need jobs. But these consumers, and we like to call them citizen consumers because they are very vocal, they are also empowered. Let's go to the next. With their empowerment, they do create flash mobs, next slide, such as the Occupy Wall Street movement. But they also can create instant protests, whether they're online and offline. And unfortunately, we saw what happened to our friends at Komen when they decided to withdraw funds from some organizations, including Planned Parenthood. And unfortunately, that had a very, very severe and fast impact on that organization, losing, unfortunately, millions and millions of dollars from corporates as well as individual donors. Let's look at the next. So we have empowered consumers. The world has changed. But there's also, go back one if you can, there's also a shifting marketplace. There's a new type of corporations, B Corps, that are setting new standards for social and environmental performance. We're going to talk about the reinvention of brand marketing. And then, of course, there's shared value, where companies are taking their purpose and their citizenship, utilizing core competencies, and developing new products and services to make money so they can sustain their social engagement. Let's look at the next. Thus, we see and we have called that purpose is now pervasive, not just in the United States because our research is global, but it is happening all over. And what's exciting is that we're not just talking about pink ribbons or green ribbons or such. We're talking about social issues and engagement from NGOs with for-profits with NGOs, on everything from jobs to STEM to volunteerism and to veterans. Let's look at the next. So let's get into a little bit of our good purpose research. I'm going to go really fast. We're excited because this was the 4th year that we fielded. It is the only longitudinal global research in the world. We fielded it in the most comprehensive manner this year, 16 countries, 8,000 consumers aged 18 plus. Let's take a little bit of a look at it. What was so exciting at Edelman this year was that for the first time, and that's why I show this beautiful San Francisco Bay Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, is that our trust research, which has been fielded for 12 years, and it's the preeminent reputational research in the world, that was fielded in 25 countries with 25,000 citizen consumers, began to engage, and we collaborated with our good purpose research. Let's look at the next slide. One of the things that we did in our trust research this year, Casey, if you go to the next, is that we...
it's just getting stopped up.
Okay. We were studying 16 attributes that create trust. And this week, we determined this before we fielded trust this year. The first 8 are about the operations of a business that has high regarded top leadership, innovates new products, delivers consistent financial returns, ranks on a global list. Those are trust attributes that earn trust today. Those are operational attributes that earn a license to operate. But what is so radically different this year and exciting for all of us who work in the field of citizenship and purpose, whether for-profits or not-for-profits, is that the other 8 operational attributes, those that guide societal impacts, listens to customer needs and feedback, treats employees well, places customers ahead of profits, and then the social and environmental engagement, those rose to the top of the list with our 25,000 citizen consumers and opinion shapers. Thus it says to earn tomorrow's trust, that societal attributes of business are more important to building future trust and trusted relationships. And as Richard Edelman has called this is so critical to earning a license to lead. Let's look at the next slide. So we then utilize this as we fielded our purpose research and as we analyze insights. And if you take away only one factoid from our purpose, our good purpose research this year, it's that 86% of global consumers still believe. We've asked this question since 2008, and the numbers have raised over those years, that business needs to place at least equal weight, equal emphasis on society's interests as on business interests. And what we have found in terms of working with companies, analyzing certainly trends, talking to our colleagues, going to conferences, that top brands and companies are more committed than ever before. Let's look at the next slide, please. What are the core issues? And I want to show you just this one. They're very, very, you look at from kind of the middle of this to the top, the global issues that rise to the top when we talk to citizen consumers, healthcare, the environment, interesting, safe drinking water, really emerging, but education, reducing poverty, disaster relief, those are global issues. Let's go to the next, which are U.S. issues. But there are differences in local markets. So when you're trying to determine what should be the focus of the social issues that your organization or your brand is going to focus on, you need to look at what resonates in a variety of areas. For the 30 years I've been doing plus this work, of course I started at such a young age, that you need to understand your business, your values, your business competencies, what's important to your core stakeholders, your employees, and what is trending that you can truly, I always like to talk about having a wind at your back, that you can get on something that's trending versus something that's really cluttered. What's so important is to find a space in an area that you can authentically make an impact on and then move forward. But I will say never, never, never pick your social issue just based on a list. And we're going to show some going forward in a moment. Keep going forward. So there were 4 major stories in our years of good purpose. I'm going to talk about a couple today. Let's go forward. The first is that wake up world, we have empowered consumers. We have 5 years of purpose, and this truly shows the reengineering of brand marketing. Go to the next slide, please. Profit and purpose are the new normal. We declared in our 2010 good purpose that purpose is now the 5th P, joining the 4 standard Ps of marketing, product, price, place, and promotion. Because those, unfortunately, in our radically and interconnected world, can be knocked off so quickly. There's a runway show in Paris, and then instantly that design is sent to the Far East to be replicated, and it may show up in a store a week later. But purpose cannot be duplicated easily, and we're going to show you, especially the PNC case today, how a company has truly embedded citizenship deep into its organization to truly have differentiation. So this slide, since 2008, it's okay for brands to support good causes and make money at the same time. You have permission. It's risen over 33% over that time. The next slide. Social purpose is now a purchase trigger. We ask the question, after price and quality, and remember, nobody ever bought something because of its social purpose. Price and quality and how a product performs or tastes or how it wears or makes me look is still first. But the next level of triggers, purpose, brand loyalty, and innovation and quality. Purpose trumps those soundly and has grown over the past years by 26%. Social purpose is the most important factor by such a great lead. Now, of course, I know you're all sitting there. What about Apple? Apple design and innovation. Apple is an outlier here, but I would say most other companies and brands are not. Let's look at the next slide. And once you have determined your purpose, and it's relevant and authentic, and it has engagement, and you've done it sustained over time, and you've measured it and reported it out, and that's a lot of work. But to make purpose work, companies are making money and making social impact. Here's what happens. You create a new narrative. That's what's so exciting. You find the human stories that come out of your purpose. And what do companies and brands want today? They want to be recommended. They want to be promoted by word of mouth and engagement. And then there's likely to have switching. Look at the percentages, 43% growth, 42%, because the narrative becomes something of culture and as well as conversation. Let's look at the next slide. Let's look at, though, you all say, okay, come on, Carol, that's aspirational, it's aspirational. Here's more proof about what's happening in the marketplace. We ask the question to our citizen consumers, are you at least purchasing products or services or brands at least monthly? The numbers have jumped substantially from 2010 to 2012. 1/3 of citizen consumers said yes, they're buying something monthly. Now it's almost 1/2. And the insight that we gain from that is more and more companies and brands are engaging in this. That's great news. But for all of you out there, that means that you need a sharper distinction, a sharper means of engagement, and better communications. Let's go to the next slide. So our first insight from our years of good purpose global research, brand marketing has been re-engineered. It's been re-engineered. And so Tide talks about loads of hope, not just whiter, brighter, or fresher smell. And Dove, one of our most wonderful cases and engagements at Edelman, the campaign for real beauty and helping young girls with their health and self-esteem around the globe. Western Union, it's not just about money transfer, but it's about helping courageous migrants search for a better life and help them throughout their journey. And certainly nature needs heroes. That's what Timberland's talking about. Next slide, please. Let's go to our next insight and story from Good Purpose, License to Lead. So, next slide. So how is business doing in terms of its meeting expectations? There's a huge performance gap in addressing social issues. We saw that citizen consumers are saying, we have huge expectations around the globe. When I went to Brazil recently, the numbers are, 91% in Brazil. If you look at in Indonesia, 94%. But look at how business is performing. Not very good. That's the blue line. That means there's a lot of space to be traveled. There's a huge gap. That's where all of us on this phone call can be more insightful, more strategic to close the gap. Let's look at the role of the CEO. Next slide, please. The role of the CEO is very specific. We asked the question, what should a CEO do? This was aided, and this is how citizen consumers responded. It's really fascinating. Create socially responsible and innovative products. Innovate. Make a long-term commitment. This isn't short-term. This is about seeing the future. Then publicly supporting. This is where a CEO, and you're going to see the Howard Schultzes of the year, the Paul Pullmans, the Jim Rohrs from PNC, getting out there and talking about their social issues, making a deep commitment, and then getting employees motivated to take part, and then communications. Let's go to the next slide. I briefly want to talk about a license to lead case story. It's Levi's. Levi's lost its way for a while when it had wonderful social responsibility policies, but its design wasn't up to speed. The company recognized it needed to enhance its design, and so it also knew that a core issue in the world was water, that water shortages were really, that consumption of water by products and manufacturing was key. So not an easy challenge, but Levi's turned to its R&D folks and said, can we, because there are 49 liters of water that are consumed in making a pair of jeans. And it took a while, but they came back with a jean that they then named waterless because it was only 1 liter of water. So that was a great differentiation. But Levi's wanted to earn its license to lead. So what it looked at across its life cycle of its product. So what it did is it looked at the how is cotton farmed. Cotton farming uses a ton of water. So they partnered with the Better Cotton Initiative around the globe to teach farmers in use of better farming methodologies, drip irrigation. So they would take some of the water out of that. They then manufactured their jeans. But then they also gave consumers some tips. Hey, they used a hang tag. You can wash these in cold water, save energy. They then partnered with Goodwill. And they said, do good, donate. When you're, my friends, when their jeans are kind of ready to be, maybe thrown away, don't throw them away. They have a little more life. Donate them to Goodwill. And again, that provides a longer life cycle. And then finally, when the jeans were ready to really be thrown away, they came up with a process to chop up the denim into house insulation. Earning a license to lead, Levi's waterless jean, from where the cotton comes from to the end-of-life issue. You can see that this powerful new product has a wonderful and authentic narrative that when I went into the Levi's store in San Francisco and I wanted to see if their employees truly knew the story, and I said, hey, I want to learn about this. I've heard about this waterless jean. I kind of had to shut up the employee in a nice way, because they kept talking on and on and on about this wonderful life cycle, earning a license to lead. Let's go to the next poll question. So let's talk about, how is your volunteerism communicated? Is it limited and internal only? Is it robustly communicated via CEO events and intranet? Is it limited internally and externally, or is it robustly integrated? We want to find out, where are you along this continuum, because we understand that it's not just about creating that license to lead product or innovation. It's about how the story is told and how a company uses its army of partners, its volunteers, in a volunteerism manner to tell the story, to engage with the community. So how are we doing, Casey? Do we have a result?
Yeah, I'll give a couple more seconds here and then close it up and show everyone the results.
Okay, so let's take a look. Well, limited and internal only, and robustly communicated internally. So we're looking at about half of you saying that, you're getting to it, but it's an internal use, which is a good place to start. But now where we really need to take our volunteerism, because companies, again, you've seen our 86% number. We really need to now take that power of your volunteerism, that key resource that's not just dollars, but it's our passion of our employees, engaging our employees and our partners in the marketplace. So while we only have 15%, that's fine, 15% robustly, I hope in another year or two we're going to see that number get to about 30%. So in our next slide, what should companies be doing? Again, we asked our citizen consumers this, and while in the U.S. it starts with donating a portion of profits or products, and that is not the same around the globe, by the way. When we get out of the U.S., it's more about new products, programs for employees, partnering with NGOs, and engaging employees to volunteer. So this changes around the globe, but what's important here again is that you have this incredible resource. Let's use it stronger. Let's look at some cases as we move on. Next. Okay, and then communications. This is a wonderful slide because Look at the numbers around the globe. You are getting permission in countries around the globe to communicate your efforts. Of course, everyone who's listened to me or seen any of the programs that I've been very fortunate enough to help architect, that you need to be authentic, sustained before you tell your story. Our partner in Brazil, Edelman Significa, who's been doing this kind of work for over 20 years, they have this wonderful name for this. They call it brand attitude, and they say, act before you talk. So always remember that. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, we have another question here. Does your CEO and his or her senior team actively participate? Because it's as one of our best practices that we've learned over the years is you need to have the institutional will from your senior leadership to truly pick the purpose, support the purpose, embed the purpose, and act the purpose. Remember, we're talking about corporate character and behavior here. So this is really important. So are they actively participating, yes or no? Let's see. Casey, we almost got the answer to this one?
Yep, here we go. 1 second.
Okay, well, it looks almost like it's getting the 57%. I'm very encouraged. But on the 43%, again, that's why you're on this call. That's why we have best practices. That's why we take the time out at Edelman to support our colleagues at great organizations like VolunteerMatch, because we want to empower you with information and cases so that when we report this, and perhaps we come back in 2 or 3 years, the no is more like 10 or 15%. Because our CEOs we need to model by our CEOs and their senior team in our volunteerism engagement. Okay, let's go to the next. So some great cases. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these, but certainly Starbucks is one of the best practice companies. Go to the next slide, please. They, in 2008, once Howard Schultz came back into the company, created a structure called Shared Planet. And they truly wanted to focus on their environmental stewardship, setting goals so they could have the greatest impact, community involvement, and ethical sourcing. They wanted to impact farmers, partners, youth, and jobs. And they create a framework, and then they have flexibility in that framework. Let's take a look at their volunteerism engagement. I was very fortunate to have Diane Mele, who runs many of these programs in terms of engagement, at our fall summit, and she talked very, very passionately about Starbucks' Global Month of Service during their 40th anniversary, where they had volunteers from around the globe completing certainly just an amazing amount of community projects. They have set very robust goals of 1 million hours of community service, and in 2010 they had about 200,000 employee and customer volunteer hours. They know that they need to ramp them up, and they are planning on doing that. They also have wonderful youth engagement programs where recently they had 74,000 youths taking action in communities through their youth action grants, providing almost 1 million hours of community service. Starbucks views their community engagement, they have flexibility in a framework where they view the local community about 5 blocks within their community of their stores. What's important to learn from Starbucks is that Howard is involved. They provide opportunities for their partners, their baristas, to be involved. They communicate this in-store, online, in their CSR reports. Again, they model behavior, and then they truly want to get involved in many issues of the day, locally as well as nationally. One of the things that Starbucks just did is, if you saw Howard on that cover of Fortune, he had his wristband where he felt that Starbucks needed to take the lead on job creation. They put their money where their mouth is. Again, corporate commitment. They put $5 million against Let's Create Jobs USA. And their partners, their baristas, were so passionate about this new commitment to a critical social issue of the day, that instead of being given their new wristbands, they bought them. So again, Starbucks modeling behavior, driving it into the stores, making it very localized with youth, with their partners and baristas. Again, great role models. Let's look at the next, IBM. Next, IBM Smarter Planets, one of my most favorite purpose programs. That IBM has recognized that they're not selling software, but they've taken a higher level issue about creating a smarter planet that was launched in 2008, where they've created a cohesive theme that our planet is so complex that to respond to water issues, logistics issues, in energy, transportation, communications, that they have created this theme that their employees can get passionately engaged with to help solve some of the great issues of the world. It is a cohesive theme that takes their business expertise to solve larger societal issues. It's business and brand aligned, and in creating this focus, the stock has been up substantially. It was up 50% in 2010. But let's look and see how Smarter Planet is driven down into their employee engagement and their volunteerism. Next. Okay. Starbucks has many different levels of taking they have over 440,000 employees, and here is their corporate service core. It's like our Peace Corps, and it started out small. It's taking 10 to 15 individuals from different countries with a range of skills, and that they go to emerging markets that have needed solutions for Smarter Planet solutions. This, over the years, IBM has had over 120 employees that have gone into different communities, and there's a triple benefit to this. It's leadership development for these individuals, it's training for local communities and providing solutions, and it's also cultural learning and cultural exchange that helps provide solutions to local markets, but also enhanced reputation for IBM. Also, for their 100th anniversary, which was last year, there was a global day of service that provided over 10 million, it blew me away, hours of service around the globe. And IBM, as a lasting gift to all of us, created activity kits, and that's why the link here, it's not, I don't think it's an active link, but if you go onto their website, you can get these activity kits that will help you and your organizations provide very deep volunteerism activities. It's a wonderful gift that IBM has shared with the world. Next. And then go to the next slide, please. Okay, let's turn as some insight into action. With the amount and pervasiveness, next slide, of purpose around the globe, whether they're in our communities, our cities, in our rapid developing economies, or in our developed markets, it's not if a company or brand will be involved in purpose, it's how. And here are just some really quick constructs that the best companies are engaged in. I talked about institutional will and leaders. Starting with depth, you know, finding an issue that's relevant, finding how you can find a white space in it, going deep and not starting with scale. Customizing for local execution. This is something certainly that Starbucks does so well, and as you will see from PNC in a moment. Collaboration is key. Companies are not the experts in their social issues, creating advisory boards, working sometimes even with competitors such as Starbucks does with its Cup Summit to try and find solutions for disposability of cups. Measurement is always key, starting at the beginning of your programming to determine baseline attitudes with your employees with the issue, deciding what you're going to measure, and constantly measuring and reporting back internally and externally. I've talked about that purpose creates a new narrative, and you will find wonderful stories. We're going to talk about engagement with PNC in a moment, and then evolving. Programs don't change your commitments. Just evolve your programs over time. Let's get to our next poll question. Okay, what is your paid time off policy for a volunteer activity annually? When we worked with PNC, and I'm so proud to say that PNC Grew Up Great, which is one of my favorite programs. It started out small, and it is now almost into its 10th year. One of the things that PNC embraced at a suggestion was a very dramatic 40 hours of paid time off to volunteer policy. It helped the company really focus the efforts of its employees to gain traction and scale and impact. So what I wanted to find out from all of you on the phone, what is your paid time off policy for a volunteerism? Casey, I think we're almost ready to show our listeners what their policies are around. Let's see. Okay. Well, looks like that it's somewhere between 2 days where we have the majority of 89%. There's about 2 days or less of paid time off for volunteering. It looks like the 3 to 4 to 5 days, PNC certainly, at their 40 hours of paid time off. I know that that was a policy that I created when I was leading CONE. That's still very much in the majority. I would say that, you have to find in your organization a policy that can be embraced initially, and then over time, as you get results, you evolve it. So now let's go to the next slide. Any of you who have been to any of my webinars or speeches or trainings, you know that I hold great fondness in my heart for PNC. I will remember the day when I got called from Vance Lavelle, their CMO at the time. I knew exactly where I was. We had worked with Vance with AT&T earlier, and she said, we really want to utilize and focus on our social engagement to make it very powerful. Our CEO has asked me to do this, and Carol, we want to talk about working with you. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide, when PNC CEO Jim Rohr was actively engaged actually in the selection of the agency and of my leadership of this entire account. He was actively engaged from all levels. And that's, if you have a CEO or senior leadership, it's one of the secrets to making very, very impactful programs. Jim Rohr handpicked a team of senior executives led by Eva Bloom. I think Eva's on the phone today. And Eva was not only, her previous job was corporate counsel at PNC, but she was then at the time head of the foundation. And Jim handpicked Eva because of her breadth of relationships across the organization, because he knew if he was going to take, and at the time we did an analysis, they were spending millions and millions of dollars, but this is what their investment looked like. It was in all over. It was in the flower show. Of course, they had their own park. They're very lucky, but all sorts of things that did not ladder up to something that PNC could rally around and have a signature commitment to it. What was so exciting was, that vision at the time led PNC through some very deep analysis to their program. And Casey, let's go to the next slide. That PNC, through Jim Rohr's leadership and his other senior executives, said we want to find something to take our millions of dollars and focus our employees. And one of the key things was having a survey not only of their current activities, but asking their employees what they wanted to focus. And resoundingly, it came back focused on children. And PNC then said, because we did a lot of additional research, they wanted to find something that was evolving, not something that was cluttered, not childhood literacy, but was there something where they could make a deep and long-term sustained commitment. Through lots of research, we found the emerging issue of early childhood education and found that children from the ages 0 to 5 truly need to be emotionally, socially, and intellectually prepared for school. And that the brain develops, that 80% of brain development in a child happens before the age of 5. Thus, the exposure to vocabulary, to engagement, to all sorts of just enrichment for children of all ages, of all ethnicities, of all socioeconomic levels was absolutely key, because if they could have that preparedness, they would then have a greater opportunity and likelihood for success in school and life. So any program that's going to be deep and sustained, PNC was not the expert. So we found the issue, we came up with a name that truly talked about growing up great, a beautiful logo, and then partners. It's absolutely critical to have the right partners. The National Head Start, and it's not that easy to find the right partners. Many, many, many need to be vetted. Who could give us credibility at the time? And the National Head Start Association, very interesting conversations about how they could get engaged, as well as Sesame Workshop, as well as Fred Rogers' company, and as well, PNC very much was a great listener, and they, with some suggestions, we created on behalf of them an advisory board that evolved over the years that has core experts in the field of early childhood, not only at the national level, but also at the regional level, where PNC is evolving and rolling out its commitments to grow up great. Underneath it all, there's great depth. There's government advocacy at the state and national level. There's education on the issue, grant making, volunteerism, and awareness. Let's go look at the next slide. Over the past 8 years, PNC has served over 1.5 million children with its bilingual program. You can see some of the materials, part of the education, and the wonderful materials that were created with Sesame Workshop. I'd just like to say that it is not easy to find the right partner, and if my friends from PNC don't blush on this, I always like to say that when we first recommended Sesame, they went, "Are you kidding? Sesame, Big Bird, you know, Elmo, are you kidding? We can't have our CEO partnering with that. We're a bank." Well, I will tell you one of my secrets on this webinar is that just go meet with the NGO. Go face-to-face. That's one of the great strengths and learnings from PNC. They constantly go eyeball to eyeball with their advisory council, 2 meetings a year. Jim Rohr shows up at key meetings. He is leading the charge. He knows the issue. It's the authenticity and the depth, and it's think about a tree with great and deep roots. It's establishing those roots in the earliest year. Those are best practices. PNC in the early year, they knew they had to educate what is this thing called early childhood or school readiness. They partnered with TV stations, public affairs to talk about it. Of course, huge, their volunteerism with their employees is just renowned. And PNC took a very studied approach over the years. They have created internal IT systems to find the volunteerism opportunities, to match them with their employees, to help create emails and to create opportunities and approvals from the supervisors of these employees so they can get the time off. And then also, unfortunately, when you work in daycare centers, you have to get TB tests and you have to get FBI clearances. Well, that didn't deter the institutional will of PNC. They came up with systems and they used an outside vendor to expedite those processes. PNC also robustly communicates online and offline and in their advertising. I apologize here, we can't show video, but I really encourage you to go and on their website to see the type of integration that PNC has added to their advertising to show their behavior, to show their corporate character to their both their employees, their clients and customers, their communities and such. Let's go to the next slide. Some of the impact before we go to questions. PNC has served more than 49 million in grants, and that is both at the national level but as well in local markets. Over 25,000 employee volunteers have donated almost 300,000 hours of service. There have been more than 2 million Sesame Learning Kits distributed. There are also Grow Up Great grants for individuals There's Grow Up Great grants. They have Grow Up Great Week. They have team grants. So there's all sorts of ways that PNC has established and added, as people know that I say, added Miracle Grow to this amazing program. But I'd also like to talk about key learnings from PNC. Some of them are just patience. As PNC has grown from the 12th largest bank to the 5th largest bank, when they acquired National City and doubled the size of their employee base from around 25,000 to 50,000, I remember hearing this story from PNC that the mayor of Cleveland was very concerned. What's going to happen to our employees when PNC comes in and becomes, integrates National City branches into PNC? Well, the first thing they wanted to know from PNC is what's going to be about our jobs. But the second and third question that the mayor asked from Cleveland, and then the governor of North Carolina, where PNC has just acquired the RBC branches in the southeast of the United States, is when are you bringing Grow Up Great? Grow Up Great shows PNC's behavior and character. It helps them to speed up the culture integration with the acquisitions it's made. It shows those new employees that have trepidation about the this new company PNC that's acquired their organizations, that this is a company that truly cares about their new employees and provides 40 hours of paid time off to volunteer. And in talking to Sally McCready, who runs this program at PNC, she said, we first have to get the integration right. We have to say that Grow Up Great is coming. We have to get the volunteerism opportunities right. And then we say in about 6 months, you too are new employees. Welcome to PNC. You will get these wonderful volunteerism opportunities in about 6 months. It helps them to learn. The other thing that they do that's really important for you on the phone to know is that before they go into a new local market, whether it's Cleveland, whether it's Raleigh, whether it's Mobile or Birmingham, they do a ton of research to find out what is the core need in early childhood, who can they partner with locally, and how can they solve, whether it's going to be arts education, science education, math education. It's an amazing program. It's also available in a Harvard Business School case. There's 2 cases if you'd like to learn more. So in closing, PNC, as they reached their initial goals of 10 years and a $100 million commitment, they made a new commitment of another 10 years and $250 million, both in dollars as well as in grants, as well as in the hands, arms, hearts, and legs of their employees through volunteerism, which was approved by their board of directors heartily. And PNC is just so excited to have this commitment that Grow Up Great is part of their corporate character. So in closing, PNC can answer the question to potential acquisitions, to its current employees, to its local partners, to its customers, to its senior executives, that they have a purpose that they share with their employees that is about having a shared destiny. And when companies have a shared purpose, such as creating a smarter planet, or crusading for breast cancer and preventing domestic violence, or building a shared planet, they will share a destiny to create the most powerful engagement with their employees, with their customers, and their communities. Because in a radically transparent world, it is about corporate character and corporate behavior that employees, customers, potential collaborators want to know. What do you stand for, and how will you act if I partner with you? So I ask the question, what is your purpose? So go to the next slide, and we now have a few moments for questions, and thank you very much.
Carol, thank you so much for that riveting presentation, and you can really tell that your heart and passion comes through, particularly when you talk about some of the clients that you've worked with and the transformation you've helped them make. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. We do have several questions that have come through, and unfortunately we have just a few minutes, but I want to get to as many as we can. Luckily, some of them overlap with each other. So first, Carol, a few people asked through the question feature on the screen, about, oftentimes we see consumer-facing brands kind of be first to the plate a little bit with some of these citizenship efforts, and particularly with communicating and engaging their broader consumer audiences in those efforts. So we had a few questions about if you had any examples or insight about business-to-business companies who might not have the same kind of consumer cachet that a Starbucks would have. Have you seen anything, or do you have any tips for B2B companies that are trying to embed purpose into their brands?
Well, certainly, I think it's actually easier for a B2B company to embed purpose into their brand. You look inside in who are your customers and what markets do you serve. And I believe I can talk about a brand new program because it was launched at the Points of Light convention, and that is for our client Excelis. Excelis is one of the 3 spin-off companies of ITT, and Excelis provides technology to the defense industries as well as aerospace and as well as a lot of other technologies now in terms of, for example, our air traffic control system, I believe. So Excelis has a very large amount of veterans who they employ. And so if you look at, as I opened, one of the core issues is that our veterans returning home need our support in so many ways. And Excelis is now partnering with Points of Light to create a comprehensive community-based both employee volunteerism as well as citizen consumer volunteerism program to support veterans. So again, what's the core competency of the business? What's a core need? Really going deep and narrow. And I think that also, again, you can communicate with your employees. You can communicate with your customers. It's much easier than going to a broad-based consumer marketplace.
So yeah, so that sounds like, often, if you're not consumer-facing, that doesn't mean that you don't have stakeholders that care. So really, it sounds like the advice is really focusing on who your stakeholders are. If it's not consumers, looking internally or into your kind of customers, even if they're not kind of citizens, in what's important to them. That's awesome.
Well, remember your customers are citizens and consumers, and as well, when you create your program, there's wonderful opportunities for customer teaming and learning together and really getting closer.
Yeah. So another question that came through was really about, I think it came during your discussion of PNC and how they kind of took the clutter that had been created in their giving back to communities and sort of looking to focus that. And in particular, a lot of us on the line often struggle with the challenge of, we're trying to get our employees engaged in whatever our citizenship efforts are. However, we don't want to limit them too much. So how do you kind of strike the balance between trying to give your program focus, but also still offering choice?
Well, I think that there's something, first of all, PNC does have its 40 hours of paid time off totally against Grow Up Great. That they allow their employees to volunteer and that they, have volunteerism groups. And when we did our research, most of the volunteerism actually was engaged with religion, churches and such. So there's flexibility in a framework, and the flexibility in a framework is that Grow Up Great is what they want to focus on because they want to have a deep impact on social issues. But each market has its own different flavor. So who they provide grants to and the different types of volunteerism in the local markets, it can be everything from helping to clean up a preschool to providing IT help to the preschool to providing just, it might be a pencil drive and colored paper and buying products and then donating, where they've donated over 400,000 products to preschools. There's many ways. But I believe that there is I think every organization and every company needs to have, matching grants still. So it might be matching grants for a university. But there also needs to be a focus. I believe there needs to be both, because you'll never be known to have this firepower of purpose if you don't focus.
So some powerful closing words. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but We'll do our best to get all the other questions responded to individually after our call today. But Carol, thank you so much for your time today. I wanted to leave everyone with a couple of reminders. You know, we have these sessions monthly where we feature awesome speakers like Carol, bringing them in. And you can find out about those upcoming sessions in two ways, both on our blog, volunteering@csr.org, and also by following us on Twitter, VM_solutions. And next month, we are excited to be welcoming Dave Stangus from the Campbell Soup Company and Craig Bida from Cone Communications, who are both going to be kind of talking about, sharing their thoughts about sort of the convergence of cause marketing and CSR. So we hope you'll join us next time for that. Thanks again to everyone on the line for joining us and sticking with us today. And Carol, thanks again for all your time and thoughts. So we'll hope to see you all next time.
Thanks for the opportunity.